There was a situation that went down in Atlanta. It was called the Atlanta school cheating scandal. I remember being on the air when it started happening and started going down, and everybody's first response was, "What the hell?"
Yeah.
Like, we had never heard anything like this. Like, it got portrayed as a concerted effort to purposely cheat and change grade test scores of these children in these schools.
Wow.
So it would show that Atlanta was doing better than it really was. And it was a very big deal. And it went all the way to the top, to the point where the governor tried to get involved, the state got involved. It was a really big deal. So now there is a docufilm coming out, One Child Left Behind. Its director and creator, Jody Gomes, is here. Also, the attorney that was involved in the case is in studio. She will be here, LaDon Jones, and Dana Evans, who was one of the educators that was actually convicted. And Dana, I remember seeing you on television.
Yeah.
Plenty times. I
Yeah.
remember feeling sorry for you. I remember being mad at you.
Yeah.
And I
real.
remember being like, I got to the point where I thought it was so unfair, but then it was being broken down in so many different ways how it really wasn't your fault.
Yeah. I think it felt like to me that the whole world was upset with me. I felt like there were times when I just wanted to die, to be honest with you. I felt like, because educators don't get paid we don't get an education for money. You don't make a lot of money. You get in it because you want to help children. And so when you're charged with hurting the very group that you're trying to save, you just feel like your whole identity has been stolen from you. And I am fighting because we were silenced for a large part of that time. It was politically motivated, I believe, racially empowered, because it's believable for some groups of people that we African Americans are diminished some way, ethically, morally, and other ways. And so I just feel like I have to fight because truth, eventually prevails. And as much as it's caused harm to my family and my life, money, financially, in every possible way, I feel like when we know that we're telling the truth, that we have to fight, even at the personal cost to our lives. I think that's what God would have us to do, and I think I asked my students to do all the time. I know I look at your faces and I think, I wonder what they think of me. I wonder if they think that I'm what they say I am. And it's very difficult when the images that are portrayed are so diametrically different than who you are as a person and who you lived. And you want to prove to everyone, no, I'm not that. But I'm grateful for today.
Dana, tell everybody, where were you at? What school were you at?
So I was at Dobbs Elementary School. I was a principal. The interesting part is I came from Inman Middle School, which is
very high-ranking
very
school.
economically advantaged. And I left Inman with a Soaring Eagle Award. I was a guidance counselor of the year when I was a guidance counselor. And then 1 year later, the only thing that changed about me was the zip code that I worked in. Nothing else. I was a superstar at the predominantly white school, and then I become a liar, cheater, and thief at a predominantly black school.
You were convicted for 30 years.
I was convicted for, not 30 years,
Okay.
but yes, I was convicted for, our years went up to, so my year now is 1 year.
Okay.
But it's a 7-year sentence, but it's serving 1 year. And so I'm out on appeal now, and I'm still fighting for justice, hoping that I can just
But
resonate.
some of the numbers that were coming out in the beginning of what you guys were going to get were astronomical.
Yes, they
People were
were.
like, they're not drug dealers.
Yeah, well,
they ain't
no,
murder
yes.
somebody.
My bond was $1 million.
What?
It was $1 million.
Okay,
No.
hold that real quick. I want to introduce one more person. Jody Gomes is here. Jody, how did you get this story, and why put it into a film?
Good morning, Frank. Thanks for having me. I was in California when I first heard the headlines, and like you guys just reacted, I heard upwards of 30 years for teachers, and I was like, well, they didn't kill anybody. They didn't, and I happened to be at the trial for Conrad Murray, who, in my mind, killed the most famous man in the world, Michael Jackson. He got 3 years. And literally a couple weeks later, the headlines for teachers, upwards of 30s, popped. And I knew something tragically had gone wrong in Atlanta, which was my second home. So I did a deep dive, and I came here to find out, didn't know if people cheated or not, but I wasn't sure, even if they cheated, if the punishment fit the crime. And that's where the film lives. The film really does a deep dive into high-stakes testing and the perils of disadvantaged schools.
Okay, so people know who you are. You actually did the Jackson family story.
I did the Jackson family story, executive produced Married to Medicine, which is shot here in Atlanta. I think we're going into our 7th season. I've done Jamie Foxx's Laugh-A-Palooza. I've done a lot of different television. And I'm known for doing really deep dives or other sides of stories that you think you know. So, of course, with the Jackson family, people thought they knew the family, and we poked a hole in the mass narrative, which is what I did in this film as well.
Okay. Also, LaDawn Jones has joined us. She's the attorney. Jade Nova?
Yeah, I had a question. You talked about the pressures of the standardized testing. So a lot of this had to do with the law that Bush put into place, right, in the early 2000s about adding pressure for teachers to have them make the students proficient. Otherwise, you all would be penalized. Is that the...
Right. No Child Left Behind is the law that Bush put into play. And basically the penalty of No Child Left Behind, if you don't pass year after year after year, and I think it's like 5 years, you escalate in penalties, whether your school will be closed, teachers will be fired. And let me just say on the record, there was pockets of cheating. The smoking gun in the film is that we did find that there were pockets of cheating, but we wanted to find out the why. And the why ranged from people doing the wrong thing to people wanting to save their schools, which were basically the sanctuary in their community, to people actually didn't cheat and did not do the crime but went to trial. And so it was a very complicated story because people were offered plea deals that complicated whether you went to trial or not. With Dana, and I have to say with Dana, we did a deep dive with Dana, and we could not find anybody in this city that could say she cheated, instructed them to cheat, or knew about cheating. We couldn't find anybody that was reputable that could give us that information. And I think Dana can elaborate better as to why she went to trial. We found a lot of them went to trial because they didn't want to take a very complicated plea deal, which in the plea deal, amongst other things, you had to implicate someone else. And so Dana did not feel like she could implicate the person that they wanted implicated, which was the superintendent, Beverly Hall.
We know No Child Left Behind. It just targeted black and brown kids. And then you got swept up in the cheating scandal. Didn't this also have a negative effect on the children as well? Wasn't it like they're punished as a result of people like you getting swept up?
In many ways, I think children may have been harmed. I think that the media portrayed the children as if they couldn't pass the test, so let me just say this: there were 3 teachers at my school who cheated. I had 69 employees, so 3 out of 69 is 5%. So that is the vast majority. At my particular school, and I can speak for Dobbs, I wrote $1 million grant for before school, after school, Saturday school tutorial. We had a GED program for parents in the community. We had we did smart boards in every classroom. We did a lot of interventions to support children. And so this notion that I harm children, I reject. But I want to be fair and say that there were people who admitted to cheating. And so if you came on and you admitted to cheating, that's wrong. I mean, we are ethically and morally governed as educators to teach children how to do the right thing. And so when kids come in the classroom and you give them the answer, even if you think misguidedly that you're helping them, it's harm because you're teaching them to do the wrong thing and not trust themselves, because I do believe that black children can achieve at high levels, because I'm a black child. I was a black child at one time from a community that people wouldn't believe could achieve, and I have a PhD. Right. So harm is relative. Did I harm children? Did my school? Absolutely not. I would put what we did, our interventions, our support, with any school in Georgia. And I said this to the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. One of the articles that they wrote about harm, I wrote them back and I said, you pick a school, any school in Georgia, and you look at the interventions, not what I'm telling you. You get it from the district attorney's office. You compare what we've done in Atlanta public schools under Dr. Hall, under everything that happened, and you compare it to any high-performing school, and I'm telling you, we will outperform them in terms of what we provided for children. And so this is an echo. This harm is an echo that is echoed from Channel 2, from the AJC, from all over, from the governor's office, that we harm children. And it makes people hate us and want us to go to jail and want us to be people. I've read blogs.
Well, Beverly Hall got convicted.
And she died.
And she died.
One important part of it that came out, Dana, as she claims her innocence, what Jody touches very well in One Child Left Behind is that there were people who cheated. They admitted to it, they testified to it, they took pleas to it, right? And so the prosecutors in this case, the media, they were looking at the people who did in fact cheat. But to your question, did that harm the children? Myself and my client, Christopher Waller, who was the principal of Parks Middle School, co-wrote his memoirs, Cheating But Not Cheated. And we called it that because out of a 180-day school year, yes, for 5 of those days during this testing period, they did in fact cheat. But on all of those other 170 30 days, just like Dana said, they worked really hard to make sure the children had what they needed. We cannot ignore that some teachers did cheat, but some parents also didn't do their jobs. There were some principals at schools from the elementary level and below that did not do what they need to do. Our community, our police, this was a citywide issue that we focused in only on the teachers, and yet we still have not addressed how do we avoid this in the future.
Okay, it sounds, coming from the other side of the table, being a journalist, it sounds like a lot of deflection going on.
Okay.
So there was cheating. Y'all you cheated. Yeah, we did. We cheated. It's deflection. So here's the thing. Why cheat?
Well, Chris explains really clearly that.
Well, let me hear from the teacher. Why cheat?
So I think people cheated because they didn't believe in themselves or children.
Right.
So it really goes down to what you believe you can accomplish for children. I didn't cheat because...
Okay, so if you didn't believe in the children, how does that not affect the children?
You cheat because there were people who testified they cheated because they knew the test was unfair for African American children. They felt like if my kids...
But you just said African American children can compete on the same level.
Yes.
They're the same. So we don't want to separate African American children.
That's what I believe. You asked me why other people cheated. So the only thing I could tell you is what I heard them say in the courtroom and what I believe. I'm making inferences from what they said. So I can't tell you why people cheat because I didn't cheat.
But let's be real, because the schools were going to close. If your school was a needs improvement 8 by the test, your school would close if you did not pass that test. And they knew that the schools were a sanctuary for some of these kids, and that test did not define them. So they cheated to keep their skills open, to make sure they can be there to help the children while they were there. That's why they cheated. Whether it was right or wrong, they were still working what they thought was in the best interest of the children.
All
and
right.
I think, Frank, you have to
that's
look at...
wrong, Frank.
Okay, well, here's what I want everybody to do. I want everybody to see the film. I want everybody to see the film, One Child Left Behind, because we can really shut the music down and talk for an hour on all this. And I know, Jody, you go into detail on all this and the affected ones. And I know that it opens up with a girl who's 20 years old and still in school.
22,
That's right.
Okay, so this is crazy. So how can people see the film?
People can also go visit the website, which is onechildleftbehindmovie.com, and they can click on host a screening. Before we go nationwide in the first quarter, you can actually host a screening at your school, at your local library, anywhere that's accommodating for yourself, and you can host a personal screening, and we do encourage that for people.